I'm here at Catalyst Studios in St Helens in the northwest of England with the wonderful Mr. Andrew Raphael, a producer, engineer, composer extraordinaire. First of all, you've been doing a bit of work in Catalyst Studios recently, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
What have you been working on?
A secret project.
You have an unusual way of working.
Yes.
And it's almost like, when you explained it to me, I almost thought of it as an old sort of school kind of tape to tape kind of situation. So what is it that you do? How do you run a session? What's the...
Right, I do everything in separate sessions. So if I'm doing the drums, that'll be the drum session, and that's its own session, and all the editing goes on in that session. And then if I'm doing the bass...
I mean, when we're talking sessions, you mean...
like a project.
The DAW project, not the day that you're in the studio.
No, so the like DAW project. So there's a drum DAW project, there's a bass DAW project, vocals, whatever, and depending on what the song wants. And I do all of the comping and the editing in isolation within that session. And then I have another project, which is the assembly project, where it all gets put together nice and clean. I think it's because, like I said earlier, I don't like clutter. Yeah. And I'm not a fan of like playlisting and having things hidden. Yeah. So I do like to have everything out, but again, it's having a way of doing that where you don't get absolutely overwhelmed with ridiculous amounts of waveforms and tracks and channels. So I tend to do it in that way, but also the great thing about it is that you get that little thrill of one, committing to something, and then when you put it all together at the end, it's like, ooh, it's kind of how I pictured it, but it's something completely different because you're not so slavishly working in the same project. There's almost like a little bit of flying by the seat of your pants excitement about it as well.
I guess you could go back to them, but at least you're making committal.
What I sometimes do as well is, like, say if we did the drums first, I will do a comp and edit of that, and then I will do a bounce of the drums, but it means that I've committed to that drum edit and that sound, so when we say move to the bass, it's all done. I don't have to think about it anymore. So you would have
a stereo drum track, is that correct?
Yeah, I sometimes separate it into metals and shells just for convenience, but it means that I've now committed to that. There's none of that problem of having multiple options of things. It is very much like, again, the tape to tape thing where you've gone, we've used these 4 tracks, now we need to bounce this down to a mono.
So has anyone ever gone, oh, this is a problem?
No.
So that you
never know. And also it's really useful for doing remote sessions, which is a lot, what I've been doing recently, because it means that there's no difference in that. If someone does a remote session, say on bass guitar, and they send me their bass guitar session, I've sent them all the stems, because usually it's just something where we've done a demo and figured out what we want first. So we'll have, like, say, MIDI drums, MIDI bass, MIDI piano. So everyone's playing to the same thing, but it's all done in a separate project, and then I can get that project, edit it, and then put it in the sort of end assembly.
And then you've got multi-tracks or stems or whatever starting at 0 and running through the
and again from that assembly that goes into another project, which is my mix project. So again, it's just all running out as audio in it. So I think even though it's a lot of projects, it means that my project isn't crazy and has a lot of stuff in it. It means that even when in the assembly stage, it's just what I want.
Do you find that the artists feel less overwhelmed with the compartmentalized things? So they know that drum sound is done, and then let's move on and do this sound.
Yeah, it does make it a lot simpler, because I think I started doing this method maybe about 7 years ago, and that was for a band, and it just made the whole process easier, and they could collate what was happening rather than this massive sprawling session that we don't know what happened to the tambourine track, and it just made the whole thing very simple, and I like things that are simple.
Awesome.
No fuss.
What do you bring to the party then? What's your What's the thing that makes people want to work with you?
I think the thing that I bring to artists and projects is a level of focus, and also just a maybe a different perspective on what they're doing. Because generally, when I work with an artist, I'll look for things that are in their music that maybe they don't know is there, and I'll try and bring that out of them. For example, I worked with an artist the other month where they were very jazzy, but you could tell within some of the song demos that they were doing something a little bit more otherworldly and slightly unhinged sounding. So I kind of just brought that out, and we ended up with a record that was much more like distorted and a bit twisted.
Cool.
So, and they you know, if they'd done that on their own, they wouldn't have gone in that direction at all. So I think for me, it's again trying to find new ways of doing things and pushing artists in directions where they don't think they would ever go, but they actually quite like. So, and again, just the interest factor, because I feel like there's a lot of records where they have a good vibe, don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
So I want to keep pushing that, and
because you have a particular interest in arrangement, don't
yes,
you? Like we've talked about this before, and like making sure that the songs are ready to be recorded and powerful enough and stuff.
Yeah, and just like, again, it's almost like an instinctive thing about when you listen to a song, it's like, oh, a string quartet would go with that, or oh, we don't need the drums in this bit, and this can build up, and we can have some backwards piano here and all sorts of things. And it's just, again, listening to a ton of records, because I think that's really the only way that you can have all these perspectives, because it's just it's like having a paint. It's a stupid cliche, but it's like having a paint box and all these colors, and knowing which color to use and what to apply to a particular canvas. That's really that's really pretentious, but it's something like that anyway, where I can just like go, this is what this needs.
So who are you looking to work with?
It doesn't really matter, to be honest. I mean, obviously, people who want to do good work and everything, and people who maybe want to do something that's commercially viable, but also maybe something that people haven't heard before or haven't heard for a long time.
Okay, so let's imagine you're in a session, you've got a singer, and they're not really coping. How do you coax a better performance out of them? What's your top tips for that?
A couple of different things, and I think this is something that's come from me not working in a commercial studio and doing a lot of things at home. And it's you either going with an angle of maybe like sing about it thinking about this, or like what's the actual crux of this song, what does it mean? Because if you know what that is, then it's almost like being an actor, and you can kind of shape your performance around what the actual song means. The other complete flip side of that is putting them at ease as much as possible, and this can be done in I've done this in quite unconventional ways. Like I worked with an artist who was, I think, 15, 16 at the time, and it was the first thing they'd ever done, and they were used to playing in their bedroom, so that's where we recorded all the vocals and the acoustic guitar in their bedroom.
Which is kind of a good sound, actually.
Yeah.
quite flexible.
So it meant that
deadness.
So it meant that kind of being in the studio and red light thing wasn't there at all, because they were literally just at home.
Yeah, because you forget, like, when you're in studios all the time, you forget that they're like quite alien places. Even the sound of them as well is just like totally different to normal spaces.
Yeah, and this is something I experience as well, because I do a lot of things at home and in mobile situations. When I come into a studio, even now, it feels quite alien to me. I'm obviously I'm kind of more of a new style producer, where I've not come through like a T-boy route or worked in many like official spaces. I've kind of had to make do with what I've got and work with the spaces that I've got. So it's given me a completely different kind of perspective on the thing, I think.
It's time for the mic quiz. Vocal chain.
1073, 1176. To be honest, like again, I've come from a background of not being in commercial studios, so I often do it completely clean and do it afterwards. To be honest,
you use Universal Audio?
I do now. Yeah, I do now.
Do you use any of the effects on the way in, or use?
Yeah, literally what I said. So I do have a 1073, and then that goes into the Universal Audio. It's basically the model below that one, and 1176, bit of Pultec EQ.
Cool.
That's it.
What's your go-to vocal mic that you would start with?
Again, I come from this background where I've not worked in commercial studios, so I've generally had to work with what I've got. So back in the day, it was a Rode NT2A, and more recently now it's a Neumann U87, a new one. So yeah,
Can't go wrong with that.
No, you can't go wrong with that. So that's generally what I do. I'm not a again, because I've not come from a commercial studio background, I'm not like a mic shootout kind of person.
But you've got some nice kick drum mics, which is the next question. Kick drums.
Oh, kick drums. Yeah, I've recently been using this MXL mic, which gives it a lot of gives everything a lot of punch.
Yeah.
And again, also those SE, I think it's a D1.
Right.
On the outside is pretty good.
What was that? That was that sub.
Oh yeah. The Solomon Low Freak that I brought in the other day.
Right, Solomon.
Yeah.
That's it.
And it's a bit like the Yamaha sub kick.
Yeah, but it's like half the diameter, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think they sorted out the impedance issues
Okay.
with the other one, so it works. You just plug it in.
Check it out.
Go. I think
Cute
the only thing
little
you have to do is flip the phase.
Okay.
On it, and it works fine.
Cool. Go-to snare.
57.
Acoustic guitar.
I mean, to be honest, I've been either using the 87, or I've got a Rode NT5.
Yeah.
And that's it. I used to do all sorts of crazy things in stereo and in ORTF and all sorts of weird stuff. But yeah, I just generally tend to do things in mono now.
Keep it simple. Keep it simple. So we were in the studio on Monday, and you had this idea about the toilet mic.
Yes. Yes.
What was that?
Yeah, I was sitting on the loo, as you do. And as you do when you're a recording engineer, you clap in every room that you're in. So I decided to clap in there, and I was like, ooh, the reverb tails are very good in here. So 5 minutes later, I stuck an AKG 414 in Omni in there, and that became our room ambience mic for the rest of the session.
But you'd done something. I wasn't aware of what you were doing in here, and I came in and heard it. There was some compression going on or something.
Yeah, I just stuck it through. Well, it went through the. Went through the 773 here, quite ramped up. Yeah. And again, into the Clark Technique over there.
Yeah. The 1176 one.
Yeah, and just sort of rammed it.
Yeah.
As much as I could.
Turn it up and.
Yeah. Because again, we did that stuff later on with the hand claps and the tambourine.
Yeah, they sounded great.
Which I sampled the other day as well.
Cool. It's always fun to do like things, I think, in studios where there isn't another room that sounds the same. That's one of the good things about recording in commercial studios, where like it's not just a plug-in reverb, it's something interesting. So let's talk genres. I believe you've got an opinion on genres.
Well, it's not so much genre, and it's not even subgenre. I think it's like in modern times things have got into subgenres. Yeah. And I kind of feel like that's a bit of a drain on creativity and freedom. I'm fine with having a broad sort of set of parameters, but when it gets so narrow, I get it gets a bit irritating.
Do you mean in terms of people trying to comply with tempos and specific? Like,
it's
drum sounds.
Yeah, and it's like music's not going to grow like that. This is something that's usually a label that's been put on by, a music journalist to try and harness what's going on in the music world, and then people use that and it's like, oh no, we can't do this because we're in this genre, and it's like
industrial post-folk.
Yeah, it's like, no, it's music. We can do whatever we want within reason, as long as people listen to it, of course. But,
so what do you listen to?
Oh God, everything under the sun. But again, it's like, to use an example, like I was listening to Tears for Fears' The Hurting the other day, and I was looking on Wikipedia at it, and it listed it as a darkwave album, and like a revolutionary darkwave album.
Did darkwave exist
no.
at the time?
And that's the thing, like, they wouldn't have thought about that when they were making the record. They were like, cool, we're kind of in the sort of new wave synth pop area, and that's kind of broad enough. But what we're doing as our own thing, we're being idiosyncratic. They used all, lots of Jungian theories in that particular album and things, and it was their own personality in there, and they're not adhering to anything else from the outside. I think that's the thing that's changed.
So how do you deal with that if you've got someone you're working with? Do you just choose people who eschew those boundaries, or how do you help people expand on what they're doing?
I think the main thing is to find what the artist's like idiosyncrasies are, because I find a lot of the time artists are trying to emulate other people, but really they should just be themselves. And that's generally how you get a much more unique performance and general sound. So that's the thing I try and mine. No
one's favourite album is ever the generic version of like paint by numbers pop, is it? Or anything like that. If people want to check out your stuff, where do they go? If they want to know what you've done with Blossoms and everything.
Oh, right,
Charlotte Church.
Yeah.
And who else have I missed?
Nadine Shah, Slow Readers Club, and lots of other independent artists.
Awesome. Where do we find out about Andrew Raphael, producer?
So it should be www.andrewraphael, but it's not. It's www.distinctrecording.com.
Distinctrecording.com. Link in the description. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.